Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Shorba, and today we have more breaking news as we have finally figured out the fate of Josh Allen at the franchise tag deadline, and that is, drumroll, exactly what we thought would happen. The Jaguars started negotiations as late as they possibly could, half-assed the process, and here we are. Josh Allen could not be extended, and the Jaguars have franchise tagged him. Now, why am I sounding pessimistic about this? Because of basically every detail involved. The issue is that you have another player on this team named Calvin Ridley that you traded for would be basically last offseason, year and a half ago now, right? Player who maybe didn't do as great as what fans expected, but did really well. A player you'd like to keep around. And the way you did your trade was that you decided for there to be conditions involved to protect you. And that's fine. The problem is pairing it with the other decisions by the team. But they decided that if he met certain parameters, goes from a fourth to a third, which is where it is now. If the Jaguars extend him before free agency begins, it goes from a third to a second. There are two ways that you avoid giving up the second round pick, as we've talked about. Those are, one, to extend him after free agency begins. And essentially, that is just a completely new contract because he goes from being on the team to being a free agent to being back on the team. It's still a third. And that option pretty clearly seems like it's not going to happen now. Because if Calvin Ridley hits the market, he's the only top receiver. There's no competition whatsoever from the rest of the players. And there are teams out there who will pay him a heck of a lot more money than what Jacksonville will. The other way you could get around that was this nifty idea that you could franchise tag him. And you know what that requires you to do? To extend one of the best players the Jaguars have ever drafted in Josh Allen. Pretty easy task, right? You'd think you'd want to do that? Nah, they didn't want to. They couldn't figure out how to get to a number. You wonder why. It's almost like they had no intentions of negotiating with them for a long period of time, for whatever reason. Who knows why. And here we are. You know, now you've literally put yourself into a corner for no reason. You put conditions on a trade. You handicapped yourself because you're unwilling to admit that you have a very good player on your team that should be here a long time. You're more focused on bringing in other guys and all these rumors leaking about Danielle Hunter and now Hassan Reddick and all this stuff. And we can't keep we can't extend the best player on the team, on the defense at least. Just crazy to me. Absolutely crazy. And it's a rant because it deserves to be a rant, honestly. It is very frustrating when we know as fans, well before we get to this point, that the Jaguars are going to screw it up. They will find a way. And what do? They screw it up. We get all these reports that, oh, they're trying, guys. They're really looking into it. And they're throwing out aggressive offers and stuff. Every person knew they would fall short and fail. And that is what they've done. What happens now? Well, you have one option left. That's to pay Calvin Ridley the most money of every team in free agency. There is no hometown discount. And I don't blame Ridley for that, okay? Because for Calvin Ridley, you missed half a year for mental health problems. You missed an entire year for a suspension, which was stupid in the first place because he wasn't even with the team. You are 29 years old, going on 30 this year. You've earned your fifth-year option and a measly rookie contract. You have to take money. I don't blame him one bit for that. He needs to do what's best for him. Even as much as fans, if we want him back, that would be great for us. He needs to do what's best for him. And so now he's going to go out here to free agency because there's nothing the Jaguars can do to stop that. Other teams who actually see the value in him are going to offer him far more than Jacksonville will, and you will lose him. And here's the kicker of it all. If Calvin Ridley walks in free agency, you might say, well, Jacob, won't we get a compensatory pick? Won't we get pick 97? Well, I'm sorry. We don't. You know why? Because the only way that you get that is if you don't spend money in free agency. If you go out and you sign those cheap deals and you don't do anything else, and you think the Jaguars are going to do that, I sure as heck don't. I think they're going to go try to spend a ton of money to go save their jobs. But I think they're unwilling to spend that money on the players who have kept them their jobs this long. The moves that literally define the best parts of your organization during the time you were here. The Calvin Ridley trade was the best trade that this team had during Trent Baalke's time. Undoubtedly. And he's just going to walk for nothing. It's crazy to me. It's absolutely crazy. But to explain why, and kind of get off the rant for a second, the way the compensatory picks work, I want to give you a couple examples from I guess this would be 2023. This shows 2024 represents the picks go towards this year, right? But this shows 2023 free agency. Take the Pittsburgh Steelers. You're supposed to get a 4th round compensatory pick out of Cameron Sutton, right? Paid $11 million a year. However, that gets wiped out because you signed a player who would be worth a 5th, who gets paid significantly less at $8 million per year, but it still wipes it out. The point is that I believe the only way the Jaguars would avoid signing a player who would impact the Calvin Ridley compensatory pick, basically remove it, is if the Jaguars sign a player for incredibly cheap. I'm talking probably under $10 million. I think that's probably the limit. And I don't know how many of those guys you can even sign. The other option is that you have to sign only non-compensatory free agents. And what those are free agents that the team willingly releases. So what that means, it's not like, oh, well, Jamal Agnew's contract up, we don't really want him, we're going to let him walk. It's still a compensatory free agent because the team didn't say, we want this guy off our team. You have to release him for them to be a non-compensatory free agent. If Jacksonville wants that 3rd round comp pick that they would surely get for him, that's the only thing they can do. The only option they have, sign non-compensatory free agents and extremely cheap compensatory free agents. And I believe there's even a limit on that. So it's dumbfounding to me, honestly. It's a rerun of last season with Evan Ingram and Jawan Taylor. And in that scenario, like, just being honest, yes, best thing happened, right? Like, I'm glad Jawan Taylor wasn't extended because we got Anton Harrison. Jawan Taylor was not worth the $20 million he got, but we're reliving the same exact scenario, except the players are very different now. Yes, we wanted Evan Ingram. Yes, we wanted Josh Allen. That's the same. But Calvin Ridley versus Jawan Taylor is very different because Calvin Ridley is a 1,000-yard receiver. He's going to go somewhere else and put it together. That will happen. And you don't know where that's going to be either. There is a very, very high chance that takes place within our division, or it's a team like the Kansas City Chiefs. Very high chance. So I'm very frustrated with it. You can tell. Not very happy right now. But this is where we get. Because we have a team that can't admit their faults, that can't do the right thing, that is so set in the things that they do that they will die over it. They will go to the grave not being able to change. When they say they want to do something, they don't really mean it. It's frustrating. I mean, we hear stuff about Trent Baalke thinking that Josh Allen isn't even a number 1 pass rusher before last season. That would be an example of him refusing to change his mind. Refusing to, because he won't pay the guy now. You could have paid him last offseason. This wouldn't even be a problem. But you did a conditional trade for Calvin Ridley, thinking you had the franchise tag available, acting as if Josh Allen cannot possibly be good this year, to where you need the franchise tag on him. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So here we are. We've released a couple players today. Darius Williams as well. Got nothing out of him, because why not? Why even explore the trade market? And now we're sure to not get a compensatory pick out of Calvin Ridley. Instead, we give up a 3rd and a fifth for a 1-year rental in which we missed the playoffs and embarrassed ourselves. So congratulations to the front office on that. I hope I'm wrong. I really do. I would love to be wrong about this stuff. I would love to be once in a while pleasantly surprised by something this team does. And it's not like they never do anything right. Sure, they have some hits. They had some free agent hits just a couple years ago. They've had good draft picks in the first round. That's all they do, though. It's not enough. And changes need to happen in the front office for this team to ever dream of being good. And honestly, at this point, talking about what I want as a fan, I just want this team to not blow everything up this year. I don't care if you're competitive. Just don't go out, spend a ton of money on a bunch of players that the next guy is not going to want, or let a guy like Josh Allen get traded, or whatever like monstrosity they could be planning. If they just avoid that, I'll be happy. But hopefully they get their crap together. I don't expect it, but this is where we are. But yeah, so that's the situation. Just to give you a cap rundown to finish this, the Jaguars now sit at $26 million heading into free agency. I don't expect anyone to get re-signed before free agency, if I'm going to be honest. I kind of doubt it happens with Ezra Cleveland. I think he'd be a lot smarter to go out and test the market. Calvin Ridley won't, because you have to give up the second, and they'll get outbid the moment free agency starts. Whether or not they put a deal together, it's just not going to happen. And then the rest of these guys, I think maybe Daniel Thomas does or something like that. But this is probably where we're sitting heading into free agency. We'll see if offensive changes take place. Like we mentioned earlier today, a lot of players who could still be cut there. They need to make changes on this offensive line. There's just a clear need to reset some things. But that's all I've got, guys. There's nothing else to throw on this. I can't sugarcoat it. I can't tell you everything's great, because it's not. This is just the reality. We have a team that has literally gone out of its way to hurt itself. I don't know why. It's a question we'll probably never be able to answer. But yeah, I'll stop ranting. I appreciate you guys watching, though. Give me your thoughts on it. Maybe you got a different opinion. Love to hear it. But that's what we got for today. Assuming nothing else happens, within the next day, next video will probably be our mock draft following the combine. So that's all I've got. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Finally, go Jags.